Welcome back and thank you for choosing to stay with us. Now, it is estimated that the rate of unemployment among the youth in Kenya is at 35%, equivalent to 4.5 million young men and women. Kenya's employment crisis is on an upward trajectory. So, in our big conversation tonight, we take insight on why are young people unemployed, who or what to be blamed, and how can we bridge the gap. Now joining us on our big discussion tonight is Philip Pande, convener East Africa Employability Summit. Well, Philip, thank you so much for making time to speak to KUTV.
Many thanks, Evans. I was looking forward to this discussion because it's very key to us, very close to our hearts, and we must appreciate KUTV for offering us this opportunity.
All right. Well, before we get into our discussion tonight, I want us to take a account of President William Ruto's inaugural speech today, and let's take a look at key areas, and in fact we'll take a look at the area of concern right now. That is the creation of employment to young people. He promised to actually yearly to recruit at least 40,000 young men into the National Youth Service with the aim of, aspiring economic growth in terms of job creation for the young people. What is your take on this? Does it actually, spur hope, even as we take, stock of this very important discussion?
Very well, Evans. I must say that the success of President Ruto towards his victory was largely by appealing to young people, and was based on the support of a dominant majority of young Kenyans who were hopeful about his presidency and bought into his narrative, especially on the Hustler Fund and the particular promises that he would change the tides on provision of employment. I looked at his speech today. I looked at the promise to generate more jobs within the NYS scheme. I would say that it's not a new thing per se in Kenya. NYS has been here, was riddled with scandals sometimes back. I think should be the period between 2013 and 2017 when we had the NYS scandal. But looking at the backtracking to use NYS as a fallback plan, I would say that then we are missing the picture. The picture is broader than NYS. Evans, we're talking about a largely educated young population in Kenya with degrees, diplomas, certificates, and some masters and PhDs. We have a dominant young population getting their PhDs before the age of 35, some before the age of 30. And so you can't have a one-size-fits-all solution that NYS is going to solve the problem of unemployment in Kenya. It would be a good thing to support those of us that are looking to join the police service, those who are going to look at joining the defense forces, those who are going to look at serving the public sector as semi-skilled and young people that are looking for skills. But what about the educated young Kenyan that is looking for opportunity at an entry level in government, entry level in the private sector, entry level in the informal sector? Where is entrepreneurship in the conversation? Where is the place of the skilled young person other than the young person that is looking for skills through NYS?
All right. Let's talk about now the theme of this, the 2023 Youth Employability, summit that you are actually one of the, or rather the conveyor of this 2023 summit. Well, the theme talks about closing the gap, a decade of investing in youth employability skills in East Africa. Before even we talk about closing the gap, let me take your account. Why is the rate of unemployment so high, especially among the young people here in Kenya?
Well, Evans, Africa is not aging. Africa is becoming younger by day, and the sub-Saharan Africa especially is becoming younger. If you look at global statistics in population,
Right.
and in fact, looking at the data by International Labour Organization, sometimes in August they had a study that indicated that between 2005 to date, simply the last 2 decades, there has been a downward trend in the number of young people out of school and out of employment totally. What we're calling people not in education, employment and training, that has reduced globally. But that statistic is not the same for sub-Saharan Africa. It has grown upwards because our population has concentrated on, swelling from the younger age than the older generation or the older population. So if you have relatively a young population, then you have a challenge of what we're calling the youth bulge. The youth bulge occurs when you have a predominantly young people or a growing young population that is then not captured in employment, not then properly catered for in terms of education and training. And the net effect of that is that you're going to have a lot of them out of work, and you have challenges such as deviant behavior, increasing crime, and a lot of those negativities related to inability to plan for your young population. So sub-Saharan Africa is quite young. Uganda, and I would say a dominant of this population is coming from the East African community. Uganda is talking about an average, a median age of slightly about 14.5, just 15 years. That is 2 years or 3 years younger than, actually 4 years younger than the median age in Africa, which is about 19.7, 19.9. Kenya, which is at just the average of the African median age. Congo, which joined the community relatively young. And looking at these statistics, there is really need to have decisive governments that are informed by data, that are informed by populations, that are informed by policy in responding to what we see as the largest crisis. And this crisis, like I've described it before, is bigger than COVID, it's bigger than poverty, it's bigger than climate change.
All right.
The inability to act decisively on the Africa's youth bulge.
All right. So what is the focus of this summit? What is the agenda? What is the big discussion that, you'll be taking a look at it as far as, creating employment and even breaching this gap is concerned? So what is the main key agenda that you'll be tackling?
The crisis we are facing, Evans, requires everybody to take action. Governments, learning institutions, development partners, the private sector, and all of us collectively. So I am the executive director of the Corporate Career Academy, which then concerns itself with transition from learning to earning, from training to industry. And this has taken us quite some time to think about, to frame, and to put in perspective. We've done this for the past 9 years, but more emphatically for the last 3-4 years. And we looked at the statistics. I'll take you back that we've talked about a decade of action. And in that very decade, the action is meant to close the gap on employability skills. Back in 2014, there was a study by the Inter-University Council of East Africa, and they laid bare some facts that pointed peculiar gaps in our higher education infrastructure, that at least about 56% of our graduates were not job ready or market ready for that matter.
Right.
One of the countries that was advanced.
Actually, we'll come to that. Yes. About the basic structure of our education system.
Yes.
And the requirement that is needed as far as producing not only learners but actually people that can actually meet the demand of the workforce. And I'm really concerned about now the discussion is, facing the dragon and how we can slay it. And this is something that has been, when you look at the statistics, every year, the trajectory keep on, rising every day. And the number of unemployment is actually worrying here in the country and even in the global statistics. When you look at the survey actually conducted by the World Bank Enterprise Survey, that indicates over 25% do not meet the required standard that employer is looking to. So even as we take account of all these things, so how do we actually slay the dragon? This unemployment crisis, especially among the young people.
Thanks, Evans, that you've added value to the statistics that I was pointing towards. The way to lay the dragon is to be very particular about our actions. And one of them is to have a discussion, a conversation around what solutions are we looking at? What's the situation like? Since 2014 to date, there have been a number of approaches and programs and projects trying to close the gap. We acknowledge that from government, from the private sector, from a majority of the partners. But have we sat as a community, as the East African community, as the Kenyan government, around the issues about unemployability skills? Yes, we are training. We have some form of higher education. Now, a lot of emphasis on TVET education. A lot of emerging programs on out-of-school employment and entrepreneurship initiatives. But are we really solving? Are we really skilling for the job market? You are mentioning the World Bank Enterprise Survey. That is one of the many other studies that then point at the inability of people trained out of the infrastructure, existing infrastructure, but not solving the employment needs. We have, KEPSA with data and statistics pointing at, again, the similar challenges that employers are pointing out there. Now, other than the conversation, where is the policy leaning? What policies, employment policies, are we using as the East African community for regional integration, but again, cross-border skills, so that a young person forcibly migrated from South Sudan or Sudan coming into Kenya would still have an opportunity to work, so that a young Kenyan moving into Uganda is not deprived of economic activities because of different education curricula or different opportunities in terms of training. How are we able as a community to integrate education, skilling, and development in that aspect to ensure that the much talked about regional takeoff, economic takeoff, is informed by our style of training, but again, our ability to accept learning from other places, and what we're calling about, we are mentioning as recognition of prior learning. People particularly that are affected by this phenomenon are people that are a refugee or having the refugee status in any jurisdiction. You have ILO coming up with a massive project called the Prospects that then looks at skills development, especially in young people living in distressed communities. Kenya has some of the two largest refugee camps, Dadaab and Kakuma. How are young people who are Africans, who are citizens of this region, some of them Kenyans, collaborating or coping up in the spaces where they are and getting integrated in our employment system? But even without delving deep into the status of people in the country living as refugees, how are we as a government dealing with our own nightmare in terms of absorbing young people and creating inclusive opportunities for everyone? So the discussion has to occur, but policy has to inform the strategic direction that we are taking in this approach. That's why, for example, one thing that we are going to do as an outcome is to launch the first ever East African Youth Employability Policy Brief to help the 7 governments of the community have a focused discussion and a focused response, or they drag on without any further delays.
All right.
Other than the policy, we are talking about curriculum reforms.
Okay.
Where are we pointing at? We've talked about TVET education. How is TVET education responding to the practical needs of the industry?
All right. Hold on to that thought. We are taking a very short break. When we come back, the discussion still continues. See you in a bit.